Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutang dhammang sanghang namasami. So the Buddhist teachings, of course, has its own unique path of spiritual practice, but invariably that individuals, when they come across it, they interpret it according to their own understanding and interests, and maybe even preferences. And depending upon how, of course, we translate it or we interpret it, this will influence how we relate to it and practice it. Just for example, I was thinking about we define bhavana, the Pali word bhavana, for example, as meditation. What comes up in your mind? What image do you have of meditation? Of course, everybody probably first of all thinks of some cross-leg posture, whether it's comfortable or not, and painful even. But that's meditation, right? That's a cross-leg. And then maybe they think of, for the mental exercise of it, they think of just focusing on the breathing until they either the mind calms down or they fall asleep or something, or maybe reciting certain special words, mantras or special phrases. Hopefully that these special phrases will help you quieten the mind or calm your mind, and maybe even make you spiritual or something. People have the various, the word meditation is used in so many different contexts, and so many different interpretations of it. And we have to maybe qualify it, at least they're saying Buddhist meditation or Theravada Buddhist meditation. I guess for Mahayana people, meditation would be just reciting, the Amitabha Buddha or something. But if you define bhavana as mental development, what does that bring up in your mind? Maybe you think, oh, hard work. Developing the mind, oh no. But then if you mental development, developing the mind in samatha vipassana, calm and insight meditation. Okay, right, now I know what I'm doing. Calm meditation, focusing attention on a meditation object to develop increasing levels of concentration or collectedness, developing more attentiveness, the exercises in mindfulness practice, more attentiveness to the sensations of the body, the feelings, the states of mind. At least my own impression is when I translate it as mental development, I get a much clearer picture of what the Buddhist teachings is about. Whereas meditation can be very, very vague. I mean, people have their own impression they put onto it, interpretation, like I say, but it's been noted that over the last quite a few decades now, that the increasing number of people have been moving away from organized religion. They've been giving up organized religion. In fact, I just checked this morning, and the third biggest religion in the world is irreligion. There's more irreligious people than there are Hindus. And there are a lot of Hindus in India. So that's a lot of people are irreligious now. Unfortunately, I mean, I can recognize that, this means, giving up organized religion. So of course, I mean, organized religion many times, sometimes anyway, becomes more involved with the organization than with religion. I know there are people who have said to me about how, they belong to a certain church, but there's so much organization. There's all these meetings to organize things, and it all has its purpose, but where's the religious part of it? I met this minister in Switzerland. When we first went there, the Swiss nun suggested we go and talk to the local church people, Catholic priest and the Protestant minister, just to let them know what we're doing, see, in case they hear rumors about us. So we went and met them. Well, the minister came to see us and to check out our place, But unfortunately, it just so happened that he had done a meditation course, Buddhist meditation course. So he was already a little bit familiar with what we're up to. See? So and then when he was leaving, he said, "Oh, you are so lucky. You're so fortunate to be able to focus on your spiritual practice." You see, I became a priest for a spiritual practice, but all my time is taken with all these other activities. Teaching the young children, not young children, about the catechism, about the teachings of Jesus and the church doctrines, doctrines. Visiting people in the hospital and doing marriage ceremonies and dealing with marriage problems, and he said all this, I guess you call it pastoral work. That's what he was involved with most of the time. And he had very little time left over for so-called spiritual practice, religious practice, as it were. And here he was, leading the church in that area. So, of course, just, in the result of it is that what spiritual teachings has he got to offer? If he doesn't know himself, he hasn't doing the spiritual practice himself, what has he got to offer? So many people, there's a number of people who, even though they turn away from organized religion, but they call themselves, they say that they are spiritual but not religious. So they still have spiritual interest. Doesn't mean that they've totally given up their spiritual interest or their religious inclinations, but they just don't find too much affinity with the church, the organized churches, organized religion. In fact, I just came across a word the other day, I think it's even today, in the news, in the ABC News, that the new word is Buddhish, not Buddhist, but Buddhish. As people who find some interest, they're interested in Buddhist practices, but do not align themselves with the Buddhist church. You can just add on to their own, you say cobbled together religion, their own type of spiritual practice, where they find a lot of affinity or a lot of interest in Buddhist teachings, but they shy away from calling themselves Buddhist, or so they're Buddhish. So, like I think I mentioned in the previous talk about sometimes the Buddhist teachings can come across as more psychological than religious. And this has its benefits. Of course, it has its disadvantages too, because here we are trying to put this unique teaching into kind of recognized categories, you see. Even calling it psychology is not quite accurate either, because it depends how you define psychology, of course. There's a lot of psychology as people might think of it as just dealing with mental problems, curing mental problems. Well, isn't that what meditation is about? Buddhism? In a sense, we're all neurotic, we're all crazy. Only the Arahant is not crazy, you see. We all have misunderstanding of reality, misinterpretation of reality. So you say we're all a little bit crazy in a way. And just fortunately, most of us can kind of hold it together long enough to do something about it. We're only neurotic, not psychotic, you say, or something or other. At least we know we could use some help. There's so many people that are similar, but they don't even know that they are neurotic. Don't even know that they don't see reality correctly. They believe that their misunderstanding of reality is real. Until there is suffering. I mean, if your view of reality finally meets some kind of conflict, then you realize, then you suffer, and you realize, oh, perhaps my view of things, my understanding of things is not correct. If it was correct, then I wouldn't be so miserable, I wouldn't suffer then. But for a lot of people, they don't even have a way to resolve it, except maybe phone up a therapist or something. But sometimes the Buddha is defined as the teacher, the great teacher, or the physician. You can even say the Buddha was the great psychologist. Understanding the nature of the human mind, understanding the nature of the human being, and then giving us tools to use to work with it. So much so that one can be completely free from suffering. Not just to cure our everyday neurosis, but realize, full awakening. And it is, of course, a gradual path. So it's to recognize that it's like taking small steps at a time. The Eightfold Path is a path we follow, and like any path, it takes effort to go on that path, and and the more we practice it, the more we develop it, the more we'll become proficient in perfecting this Eightfold Path of practice. But defining Buddhism maybe as a psychology, sometimes it depends on the context. Depends where you are. If you say, "Oh, Buddhism is a religion," some people get really nervous because lots of there's associations, with religion. It's dogmatic, and once you get into it, you're trapped with it or something, and you can't escape. But to say Buddhism is a psychology, maybe, okay. If people do have some kind of religious issues, and you say, "Oh, Buddhism is a psychology," okay. What's this psychology anyway? But you say it's a religion, no thanks, end of conversation. I feel very nervous and defensive, maybe even. And then maybe when you say it is a psychology, and they recognize they don't know what it is, they're not threatened by it, then maybe it's possible to explain. And maybe at the end of your explanation, they say, "Gee, it sounds like a religion, actually." This just snuck up. I just snuck this in, you see. On the other hand, I think if we just say it's religion, I mean, for a lot of people, that religion does not relate to the mind. Religion most of the time is concerned with external powers, or the supernatural or something. One of the wrong views, the Buddha said, one of the views which is not helpful for spiritual practice, was believing that you're controlled by some external power. Your hands are in the control of other external power of some kind. That you don't help yourself. You say, "Well, what can I do? What can I do? I'm just to help this human being, And this special supernormal power is more powerful than me, and it has me under control, so I'm just a puppet." That detracts from developing any spiritual energy of your own. You just put your hands, and it can be very comforting, of course, but it doesn't really work. I guess if you believe it well enough, it seems to work well enough, but until you start to have conflict, disagreements. Why is it this way then? Why is there's this special power out there? Why is there so much suffering in the world? Yeah. Why does it happen that way? That's just the way it is, you know. You're being tempted, you're being tested. Rather. But anyway, and because of this, you know, a number of people are, you know, are now opening to, say, a more psychological approach to life, you know, more scientific based. There's also like seems to be an evolution of consciousness. I'm getting a little bit new agey here, but it's not a straightforward development. But I mean, there is just by the fact of having more information around, more experience. You know, hopefully that experience can be beneficial and used. I mean, not corrupted. You know, of course, information is corrupted sometimes. People make use of it and then they twist it around. But if you have an all-round education, you know, keep your mind open, then you can recognize there is sort of like some things you can learn about the nature of the human being, about reality. I mean, psychology has evolved a lot in the last 100 years or so. And there is now what's called transpersonal psychology. Been around for a while, actually quite a while now. Transpersonal psychology, so it's not just, you know, psychology of healing for mental illnesses, but it's taking into account the transpersonal aspects, like spiritual aspirations. And sometimes they recognize, one of the psychologists talked about peak experiences. Somebody has a peak experience, you know, which the Buddhists would say, you know, something like, you know, a state of samadhi or something, a unitary consciousness. It happens to people, you know, even people who don't even so-called practice religion. Sometimes they have these experiences, walking in nature, or I think a lot of the people who do the extreme sports, they have these moments. I met this rock climber when I was in England. Went to this meditation group, and there's a rock climber, and he ran the group, as it were. And I stayed in his house, and I know nothing about rock climbing. Okay? What's a rock climber? I mean, you've got any mountains in Britain, you know? What sort of climb in Britain? I mean, a couple of hills, you know? Anyway, he was a rock climber. So anyway, when I was in the house, he had these books there. So I looked at his books, and he lived in near the Peak District, I think they call it, Derbyshire.
Peak District. Yeah.
The Peak District, and they had these kind of cliffs, big rocks, and these cliffs are like 20 meters high, 30 meters high. Not very high, right?
Not high.
but they'd climb up these, but you can still get killed, you know, if you fall off 30 meters or so, you know. Yeah. And I didn't know it at the time, but in his books, I noticed this man's name came up, you know. First unassisted climb. Oh, first unassisted climb here, there. Oh, he was good. And then we were talking about it, and he said, well, that was my meditation before, he said. He said, sometimes when it really works, he said, me and the rock are one, he said. He had a unitary consciousness, in other words, with this rock, you see. I mean, it's pretty harmless. Nothing with a rock, I guess, you know. Just like your breath, it's pretty natural, you know, natural. But after a while, you know, of course, climbing rocks, his fingers and his toes got got arthritis in them. Really painful using your fingers and your toes climbing up these rocks, you see. So then he had to find another way of experiencing the similar thing. So then he took up meditation. Meditation was his alternative to rock climbing. I don't know how successful he was with meditation, but I mean, if you're climbing up a rock and your life depends upon it, you're very focused, right? Very, very focused. You know, one kind of stray thought maybe, and you get the wrong, and you can injure yourself and not kill yourself. Once when I was staying I visited this monastery in northeast Thailand, and it was quite an exceptional place. It's on a pinnacle mountain called Putok. And I think he had 7 levels. The abbot Ajahn Tiradhammo had 7 levels up this pinnacle rock. And the kutis were scattered up the rock, you see. And the sala, I think, was about 5th level or something or other. And I went to stay there for a little while, and then the monks were leading me to this kuti. I climbed up this about 30-meter ladder, was bouncing up and down every step, up to this little ledge up there. Climbed along a little ledge, and there was this little shack, just a little tin roof and a platform to sit on. Yeah, that was my kuti. And it was, it wasn't even flat either. It was sloping down the hill, sort of like rolled over at night, went out the wall down the cliff, and it was about a 20, 30-meter drop down to the next level. And I tell you, I had even in my dreams, I was walking mindfully around the ledges. Very, very carefully walking around because, one slip, they did have railings on it, but they weren't, I looked at them and I thought, gee, who made these? And because it was up on this pinnacle mountain, we had to go down in the dark, down to the bottom to go into God, arms round, you see. So I'd go down the eastern slope, because that's where we had the most light. The light, the sun was rising over the mountains of Laos, and so a bit of light there. It was still semi-dark, but so I went down the eastern side, and after the meal I came up the western side, because it was in the shade, you see. So, but the last day I was there, I thought, I think I should go up the eastern side just to see what I've been walking on. And I was glad it was the last day, because when I saw this series of walkways and ladders and steps and things, oh my gosh, it was really frightening. I don't know I was walking on that in the dark. But strangely enough, nobody ever got injured there. It was really, they apparently had asked the local, at that time it was shortly after the Vietnam War, so there were some soldiers, American soldiers there, so they asked them, engineers, about building this walkways up there, and they said impossible, they could never do it. Well, the monks and the nuns built it. They hung over in ropes over the side and chiseled into the rock and put in sticks, put in cross beams and put ladders up and but it was so kind of, I guess just being in that environment already increased one's mindfulness, because again, like the rock climber, one slip and one day I was walking around the ledge, and it was a precarious little ledge, and we kind of went to different angles and go this corner, that corner, this corner. I walked around, and then I just, for a minute, my mind wandered to something else, and I slipped. I was heading for the edge. Oh, my goodness, don't let your mind wander, don't wander. So maybe living in the forest also is if you recognize that there are, in dangers in the forest, for example, it can be very helpful to reflect upon them, We use our precious life for benefit, for usefulness. If you're careless, you could step on a snake or something. You could twist your ankle, you could step in at least the ants or something, and get a reminder, be more awake, more alert, more attentive to where you're going. But of course, in the Buddhist teachings, again, it is a very unique system. It doesn't quite fit into the categories in the English language. Not quite psychology, a bit of that. Not quite religion. Years ago, they had an argument when Buddhism was first became known in the West. There was this discussion in Britain because, is Buddhism a religion? Because it was the religious dialogue was, of course, dominated by theistic religions. You see, it's kind of what religion means. There's a creator God. You worship a God, and Buddhism doesn't have that. So is it a religion or not? But anyway, fortunately, it was successfully argued Buddhism is a religion because it does have even doesn't have a God as the center of it. It does have many factors of other religions. A system of morality. It does have a path of transcendence or awakening or enlightenment or something. There's even a religious order. It does have many features of other standard religions. So it's finally recognized, yes, Buddhism is a religion. So we get some benefits from that, like religious visa. I wouldn't get a psychological visa, would I? No. But it depends upon, of course, what you emphasize. If you emphasize the religious part, you can say on one hand, it's quite beneficial because it does suit many temperaments of people. There are those who would say maybe are faith temperament, who appreciate the religious aspects of it. It depends how can you define religious, but the devotional aspects, it depends upon, of course, depends how you see the Buddha. And I think a lot of Thai people see the Buddha like a god. Huh? Probably, some supernatural being who's still hanging around, can give wishes, can give your blessings for things, and although in the Pali Canon, the Buddha said, when he passes away, he will not be seen again by humans or devas. He's just gone to the great beyond, you see. But it's a bit hard to rationalize that sometime. Emotionally, you want somebody close by to look after you. But the Buddha did leave, also just reading the Parinibbana Sutta, and in that the Buddha said, when he was passing away, went into Parinibbana, he said to Ananda, you may think when the Buddha passes away there'll be no more teacher. He said, but I leave you the teaching. The teacher's gone, but the teaching is still here. And then anybody, monk or nun, layman, lay woman, anybody who practices this Dhamma correctly will realize the benefit of it. They're the ones who will really pay respect to the Buddha. At that time, the Buddha was just on his deathbed, and there were these miraculous events occurred. Mandarava flowers fell from the heavens, and there was this celestial music. And Venerable Ananda, who was seemingly a very faith temperament, said, "Isn't this wonderful that the Buddha is worshipped so well? Revered and worshipped." And he said, "No. The lay followers who practice the Dhamma properly, they are revering and respecting the Buddha, in the best way possible, to practice his teachings. Not just to pay respects to him or revere him, but to put the teaching into practice. Develop the Eightfold Path, step by step." Of course, many times it is easier to look outside and just, oh yes, it'd be nice to be a Buddha, rather than look in your mind and notice the greed, aversion, delusion there, better just to sit here and hope. Yes, it'd be nice to be like that. Nice to not have greed, aversion, delusion. But just hoping for it isn't going to make much difference. It gives you some appreciation of the possibility, maybe some appreciation of the need to do the practice more seriously. And greed, aversion, delusion doesn't go away because you hope it will go away. To do something about it. What to do about it? Look at it. Bring mindfulness as the exercise in states of mind. Be attentive to greed, aversion, delusion, and notice its arising and its passing away aspects. Especially noticing its arising and passing away aspects, because just to be aware of it, sometimes people give too much, and they give too much attention to its solidity. It's there, yes. What to do with it now? Let's fight with it, struggle with it. Rather than observe it, it comes and it goes. It's not a solid block of concrete. It is a process, rising and passing away, and then there's causes behind it. You get back to the causes then, uproot the causes of it. Rather than trying to get rid of it itself, it's just more aversion, more delusion, more greed. But of course, having this different perspectives on the Buddhist teachings can give us hopefully a careful balance. Like you say, people who are maybe faith temperament, they prefer the kind of religious aspects of it, but then maybe they're looking at their weakness then. They aren't looking at the weak part of their practice then. The wisdom part, you can say. One of the categories the Buddha referred to was called the 5 spiritual powers. And this is mindfulness, energy, collectedness, samadhi, sattva, and wisdom, panya. These 5. And I think it's a commentary that talks about how we should balance these out. Mindfulness is in the center, as it were. Is aware of or attentive to what these factors are and how they're developed or lacking in development. And then energy and collectedness, concentration must be balanced. Concentration can lead to one-pointedness, which means to a focusing of the energy, but it can lead to kind of a calming down too, tranquility. And it can become tranquil to in extreme. It becomes very, very passive or very, very tranquil, but not enough energy in it. Energy, needs to balance with collectedness or concentration with energy, then can balance them out. So we need an energized calmness. Some people just recognize, the need for calm. It becomes a real dull calm, sleepy calm. Mistake, sleepiness and lethargy for calm, tranquility. Your mind isn't, is calmed down just because you've fallen asleep, not because not because there's any real clarity there. Then too much energy can lead to restlessness. It needs to be contained. Energy tends to bubble up and can be dissipated and spill out. It needs to be collected or contained then. Then the other two are wisdom and what's called sattva in Pali, usually translated as faith, or translated as trust. And the panya part, is panya is that at a developed level is wisdom, but undeveloped is just understanding or knowledge. So if we just have emphasized the knowledge part, the wisdom part, we think we understand. Something we have experiences, and then we make our conclusions about it. Yes, I've seen this, I know this. Whereas trust needs to have some ability to open up to things you don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. There's all the knowledge we've accumulated over all the millennium. There's still so many unanswered things. So many things that science has not an answer to yet. But who looks at those? You just look at the stuff that and think, and then it feeds your ego. I know this. I've done meditation for so many years, so I've had this experience, I know. But there's so many different experiences, and you can't know them all. The Buddha said that the realm of collectedness or jhana, absorption, was one of the unthinkables, incomprehensibles, achinteya. It has no limit to it. So we have our own experiences, but the problem comes when people make their conclusions about it. They do meditation practice for so many years, and then they, I know, it's all about that. But there's so much you don't know, really. So trust, gives a little bit of a balance to too much knowledge, too much information. Then we have to trust that we don't know. How many of us really know that the Buddha's teaching leads to the end of suffering? Who knows? Come on. Yeah. Experientially. Guru. We know intellectually that maybe, we have some inkling of it, but completely, we finished the course already. But we trust that what the Buddha says is right. We trust that it seems reasonable, and we can follow it, and not asking impossible things to do. We trust in it. Then it allows us to keep going with the practice and find out for ourselves. If we just have too much trust, it can lead to superstition, believing all kinds of things. Somebody says something, and yes, of course. Especially if somebody can say it very convincingly. I know this, I know that. This is the story of so many, spiritual teachers. And they, do they really know, or are they just inflated? So many great enlightened masters, so-called, have crashed after a few years. Overconfidence. And the Buddha recognized this too, because it was one of the rules we have, the rules of dismissal, is that we claim supernormal powers, superhuman powers. But there's an exception if you overestimate your abilities. You make a claim and you overestimate. I would err on the other side, underestimate. But it's possible, you do have a powerful experience. There have been people who have had, I can say, exceptional experiences, and then they draw a conclusion. Oh, this is it. No, I've had this breakthrough. And then after, a few days, a few weeks, it takes a few years, so it dries up. Especially if it hasn't been grounded in our everyday experience. A number of people have had on meditation retreats, they've had some powerful experiences, but unless it's really integrated into their life with sila, samadhi, panya, after a while it evaporates again. And they have what I call their vipassana scrapbook. They have a little insightful scrapbook around, say, oh, back in 1993, I was enlightened, for... Then I had a resurgence back in 2000, but now what happened to it? Just a memory now. Unless they're able to integrate it into their life and live from that place. But once these can be balanced, some degree of trust, some degree of understanding, perhaps they can grow together then. And then when the wisdom can grow and develop, you really understand the way of the practice itself. You trust in it. So you have the confidence in it. You see it does work. It does have to bear fruit. Your confidence and this trust becomes confidence then. It matures, just like the so-called wisdom comes from understanding, from basic understanding from knowledge to understanding to wisdom, direct realization then. And these 5 spiritual powers, they begin to develop into powers themselves. At first they're not very powerful. We all have these states of mind, we all have some degree of understanding, some degree of collectedness, some degree of energy. But how often does it get empowered to become spiritual powers? So depending upon the way we approach the Buddhist teachings or even define it, this will determine how we practice the Buddhist teachings. The Buddha said that the sanya, the giving names to things, is a source of wisdom, of knowledge and wisdom then. So being able to be more flexible, is what I really appreciated about Ajahn Chah's approach. He's very flexible. Sometimes it can be helpful maybe to look at the Buddhist teaching more psychologically in the sense of understanding the mind. Psychology literally means to understand the mind, study the mind. Other times we need to be able to, trust in the way of practice, a more open attitude to it, a more religious attitude, if you like, or spiritual at least. You say religion many times has a certain doctrines we must adhere to or something, and who knows how much of the Buddhist teaching itself, I would say can be a difference between the Buddhist teachings and Buddhism. Buddhism many times is infused with many, worldly concerns. It has with cultural additions to it. Whereas the Buddhist teachings itself, they're very, very straightforward. Not all kinds of cultural things added to it and additions, historical things. You read in the Pali Canon, the Buddha was way he was teaching. But sometimes it can be quite far removed from, what the Buddhism has become. But once we can recognize there is different approaches to it, it can be quite flexible, and that's what I appreciate about Ajahn Chah's teachings, because he was very flexible in his approach. When it comes to what we call the skillful means to use in our spiritual practice, Ajahn Chah just said, if it works, use it. But of course what that implies is that you put it to the practice. And you can hear these different things, you've got to try this method, you've got to try that kind of method. Well, maybe, but try it out. Maybe it does work, but maybe it only works for that person. It only works for that temperament of person. It doesn't work for you. So try it out and see for yourself. But the main thing is you got to put it to the test, find out for yourself. So being flexible, of course, and is being adaptable, because our spiritual practice is ideally a progression, a development. So what works today maybe won't work tomorrow. Maybe you can deal with certain kind of practices you do today, deal with certain kind of level of defilement or confusion in your mind or greed, aversion, delusion. But then tomorrow it doesn't work anymore because a different kind of greed, aversion, delusion has come up. For example, usually it's a more subtler level of greed, aversion, delusion. So you need new techniques, new approaches perhaps sometimes. But to keep your mind open and active, then this is a developmental process. And we know this when we recognize the degree of suffering is beginning to lessen. Having less suffering, less confusion, less greed, aversion, delusion, then okay, this is the right path then. So we follow that, we realize hopefully the complete cessation of suffering then. But it's up to each one of us to apply it ourselves and to see the result, be experienced each person for themselves. So leave that for your reflection.
Mayan Hammadatayo Sadhu Dharam Tatamase